The signal wasn't for us, but we answered anyway. Part 5. The Liberation. Old ship was called the Horizon's Hope. It had been built by a species called the Villani, who had answered the signal 600 years ago. They had been scientists and dreamers, explorers who wanted to understand the mysteries of the universe. They had flown into the void, marshes with hope in their hearts, and they had been trapped there ever since. Captain Una was the first human to board the Horizon's Hope. She walked through dark corridors, her flashlight cutting through centuries of dust. The ship was cold and quiet, but it was not empty. She could feel life here. Faint, weak, but real. She found them in the central chamber. Stasis pods. Hundreds of stasis pods lined up in neat rows. Inside each pod, a Villani slept. They had put themselves into frozen sleep when their ship was captured, hoping that someday someone would come to rescue them. They had waited 600 years for that someone. Captain Dongsu's voice came through her radio. "We're detecting life signs. Lots of them. These people are still alive. I see them." Una walked among the pods, looking at the faces inside. The Villani were small creatures with silver skin and large, gentle eyes. They looked peaceful in their sleep. They didn't know that centuries had passed. They didn't know that their species had been declared extinct. They didn't know that the galaxy had given up on them. But humans never gave up. "Ai Jin," Una said into her radio. "Can we get these stasis pods back to our ships?" "It'll take time. Some of these systems are ancient. But yes, we can do it." "Then do it? All of them. We're not leaving anyone behind." It took hours. The Devourers watched from the darkness, too weak now to attack but too stubborn to leave. They whispered their hatred and their hunger, but the humans ignored them. They were too busy saving lives. Pod by pod, the Villani were transferred to human ships. The sleeping survivors were carried gently, carefully, like precious treasures. Because that's what they were. Living proof that hope could survive even in the darkest places. But the Villani weren't the only survivors. As the humans explored deeper into the void marshes, they found more ships, more stasis pods, more frozen survivors from a dozen different species. The Kalori warriors who had come to fight the darkness, the Mendra scholars who had come to study it, the Urvani scientists who had tried to understand it. They had all failed to escape, that they had all found ways to survive. The Devourers had been collecting them, keeping them, feeding on their fear and despair while they slept. For centuries, the monsters of the void marshes had grown fat on the hopes of the trapped. Now those hopes were being rescued. Captain Una. Admiral Su Bin's voice was filled with wonder. "We found over 3,000 survivors. 3,000 people from species that were thought to be extinct. Keep searching. There might be more. Our ships are almost full. Then we'll make room. We'll tow their ships behind us. We'll strap pods to our hulls if we have to. No one gets left behind, Admiral. No one." Days passed. The human fleet worked without rest, without sleep, without stopping. They pulled survivors from every corner of the void marshes. They repaired ancient ships and brought dead engines back to life. They did the impossible because the possible had never been good enough for humans. And finally, it was time to leave. The fleet gathered at the edge of the void marshes. 32 human ships, battered and scarred, but still flying. Behind them, they towed dozens of rescued vessels. Around them, they carried thousands of survivors who were slowly waking from their long sleep. The Devourers watched from the darkness. They didn't attack. They didn't whisper. They just watched as their prisoners escaped, as their power faded, as everything they had built over thousands of years crumbled away. Captain Una stood on the bridge of the Defiant Star and looked back at the void. "You lose," she said quietly. "We win." The shadows didn't answer. But Una knew they heard her. The fleet jumped into hyperspace. Stars appeared around them, beautiful and bright after so long in the darkness. Cheers erupted on every ship. Humans hugged each other and cried and laughed. They had done it. They had actually done it. 3 weeks later, the fleet arrived at the Galactic Coalition headquarters. Every species in the galaxy was watching. News of the human expedition had spread everywhere. Some had called them fools. Some had called them heroes. Now everyone would see the truth. Ambassador Taiwan was waiting when the first ship landed. He watched as the survivors walked down the ramp. Belani with silver skin, Talori with 4 arms, Mendrith with feathers like fire, Avani with scales like jewels. Species that hadn't been seen in centuries. Species that everyone had mourned as lost forever. They were crying. They were laughing. They were alive. Delegate Vorn was there too. The tall alien stood in the crowd, watching with his 4 silver eyes. He said nothing as the survivors passed. He said nothing as the humans were cheered as heroes. But when Taiwan walked by, Vorn reached out and touched his arm. Ambassador. Taiwan stopped. Delegate Vorn, the council ordered you not to go. Yes. You went anyway. Yes. Vorn was quiet for a long moment. We were wrong. The elder races have lived for thousands of years. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have survived by being careful, by avoiding risk, by choosing safety over courage. We thought this made us wise. And now? Now I think it made us cowards. Vorn's voice was soft. We heard the same signal you did. We felt the same pull to help. But we ignored it. We convinced ourselves that it was impossible, that the risk was too great, that nothing could be done. We gave up without even trying. Taiwan waited. You didn't give up, Vorn continued. You flew into a place that had killed thousands. You faced monsters that had destroyed civilizations. And you won. Not because you were stronger than us. Not because you had better technology. You won because you refused to accept that some things are impossible. That's what humans do. Yes, I am beginning to understand that. Vorm bowed his head. The council was wrong to order you to stay. I was wrong to deliver that order. On behalf of the elder races, I apologize. And I thank you. Taiwan smiled. It was a small smile, tired but warm. You're welcome, delegate. But I didn't do this for your thanks. I did it because someone needed help, and I could help them. That's all. A few hours later, there was a great celebration. Humans and aliens danced together under the stars. The rescued survivors told their stories to crowds of listeners. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt united. Hopeful. Alive. Captain Una stood apart from the celebration, looking up at the sky. Dongsu found her there. Captain, you should join the party. You're the hero of the hour. I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone should have done. But no one else did. That's what makes you a hero. Una shook her head. The real heroes are the people who kept the survivors alive for 600 years. The real heroes are the crew members who fought the Devourers without knowing if we would win. The real heroes are everyone who refused to give up, even when everything seemed hopeless. So, everyone. Una smiled. Yes, everyone. That's the point. One person can't save the galaxy. But a lot of people, working together, refusing to quit, supporting each other. They can do anything. Dongsu stood beside her, looking at the stars. What happens now, Captain? Now? Now we go home. We rest. We spend time with our families. And then, when the next call for help comes, we answer it. Because that's what we do. And the Void Marshes? The Devourers? They're still out there. Weaker now, but not gone. Someday, someone will have to deal with them for good. Yuna's eyes gleamed. Maybe that someone will be us. I wouldn't bet against it. Far away, in the depths of space, the elder races gathered to discuss what had happened. They talked about the humans who had defied their orders. They talked about the survivors who had been rescued. They talked about what it all meant for the future of the galaxy. And in the end, they reached a conclusion. The signal wasn't meant for us, one of them said. It was meant for whoever was brave enough to answer, whoever was crazy enough to try, whoever was human enough to never give up. Then perhaps, another replied, we should learn to be more human. And in the darkness of the void marshes, the devourers whispered to each other. They had ruled the shadows for 10,000 years. They had killed civilizations without mercy. They had believed themselves invincible. But now they knew fear, because the humans were coming. And humans never, ever stopped. The signal wasn't for us, but we answered anyway. Part 4. The human response the shadows didn't understand. For thousands of years, they had hunted in the darkness. They had killed species after species. They had fed on fear and despair. Their power came from isolation. When creatures felt alone, felt hopeless, felt abandoned, the devourers grew strong. But the humans wouldn't stop talking. On the defiant star, Captain Yuna had opened every communication channel she could find. Music played on one frequency. Old Earth songs about hope and courage and never giving up. On another frequency, crew members from different ships were telling jokes. Bad jokes. Terrible jokes. The kind of jokes that made people groan and laugh at the same time. Why don't scientists trust atoms? A voice asked over the radio. Because they make up everything. That's awful, another voice replied. Here's a worse one. What do you call a fake noodle? An impasta. Laughter echoed through the fleet. It wasn't happy laughter. It was scared laughter. The kind of laughter that comes when you're terrified but refuse to show it. But it was laughter. And the devourers hated it. The shadows pressed against the ships, trying to find cracks, trying to slip inside. But every time they got close, someone would start singing. Or someone would crack another joke. Or someone would just start talking about nothing. About their families back home. About their favorite foods. About the stupid things they did when they were young. The whisperers tried to fight back. You are fools, they said. You are dying, and you don't even know it. Stop your noise. Accept your fate. You know what? A voice replied over the radio. You talk too much. Has anyone ever told you that? You really need to work on your conversation skills. More laughter. The shadows writhed in confusion. On the bridge of the defiant star, Hai-Jin was working like a woman possessed. She had torn apart half the engineering systems. Wires hung from the ceiling. Sparks flew from broken panels. But she didn't care about the mess. She cared about the light. Captain, I think I've figured something out, she said. The devourers aren't just hurt by regular light. They're hurt by specific frequencies. The kind of light that stars produce. The kind of light that life needs to grow. Can you replicate it? I can try. If I modify our engine output and run it through the external lights, I can produce a beam of concentrated stellar radiation. It won't be as strong as a real star, but it should be strong enough to actually damage these things. Do it, Hai-Jin grinned. It was a wild grin, the kind of grin that engineers get when they're about to do something crazy. Give me 10 minutes. While Hai-Jin worked, Yuna coordinated the fleet. They had lost 15 ships to the devourers. That was 15 ships too many. But the remaining 32 ships were holding together. Barely. All ships, form a ring, Yuna ordered. Point your lights outward. Don't let any shadows get behind you. The ships moved slowly into position. It was hard to see in the darkness, and their navigation systems were barely working. But they found each other. They always found each other. "Captain," Jiwoo said, "I've calculated a path to the center of the void marshes, to the source of the signal. But it's going to be dangerous. The Devourers are thickest there. They're guarding something. Or they're keeping something prisoner," Yuna replied. "Either way, we can't just fly through. We'll be torn apart." Dongsu spoke up. "What if we punch a hole? Send our strongest ships first to clear a path, then have the rest follow? The strong ships would be destroyed. Maybe, maybe not." Dongsu looked at Yuna. "Captain, I've been thinking. The Devourers feed on fear, on isolation, on silence. But we've been fighting them with the opposite. Connection, noise, light. What if we amplify that?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, we stop defending and start attacking. We stop being scared of the darkness and make the darkness scared of us." Yuna stared at her second officer. For weeks, he had been the voice of caution, the one who questioned everything, the one who worried about all the things that could go wrong. And now he was suggesting they do something crazy. "I like it," she said. The communication screen flickered. Admiral Su Bin's face appeared, clearer now that the fleet was closer together. "Captain Yuna, what's your plan?" "Admiral, we're going to push forward. All ships together. We're going to punch through the Devourers and reach the center of the void marshes. That's suicide. Maybe, but staying here is also suicide. At least this way, we might find out what's really going on." Su Bin was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. "You know, Captain, when I was a young officer, they told me that humans would never survive in space. They said we were too weak, too short-lived, too emotional. They said the galaxy would eat us alive." "What did you tell them?" "I told them to watch and learn." Su Bin straightened in her chair. "All ships, this is Admiral Park Su Bin. We're going in. Stay together. Keep talking. Keep laughing. Keep fighting. And whatever happens, don't let them see you scared." The fleet began to move. 32 ships flying in formation, lights blazing, music playing, voices echoing through the void. They pushed into the thickest darkness, into the heart of the void marshes. The Devourers attacked with everything they had. Shadows crashed against the ships like waves against rocks. The whispers became screams. The cold became freezing. Crew members on every ship fought against the despair that tried to creep into their minds. But they kept talking. They kept singing. They kept fighting. "My grandmother used to make the best rice cakes," a voice said over the radio. "Whenever I was sad, she would make them for me. I miss her rice cakes." "My mother's soup was terrible," another voice replied. "But I'd give anything to taste it again." Stories poured through the communication channels. Stories about home. Stories about family. Stories about love and loss and hope. The Devourers tried to drown them out, but human voices were stubborn. Human voices never shut up. Then Hygiene shouted, "Captain, the weapon is ready." Yuna turned to her engineer. "Are you sure it will work?" "Absolutely not. But let's find out." The Defiant Star aimed its modified lights at the largest concentration of shadows. Hyjin pressed a button. A beam of golden light shot out from the ship. It was warm. It was bright. It was like a piece of the sun itself. The shadows didn't just retreat. They burned. The Devourers screamed in agony as the light tore through them. For the first time in thousands of years, the masters of the void marshes felt real pain. "Yes!" Dongsu shouted. "It's working! All ships, copy these specifications." Yuna ordered. "Modify your lights. Hit them with everything we have." One by one, the ships of the fleet began to glow with golden light. It took time. Some engineers were faster than others. Some ships had more power to spare. But slowly, the humans built a wall of light in the darkness. the Devourers pulled back. They had never faced anything like this. They had never faced prey that fought back with such ferocity, with such unity, with such stubborn, ridiculous, impossible hope. "Keep pushing," Admiral Subin ordered. "We're almost there." The fleet moved forward. The golden lights burned a path through the shadows. The center of the void marshes was getting closer, and now they could see it clearly. A ship. A single ship, very old, very damaged, floating in the heart of the darkness. And inside that ship, faint but real, there was light. Someone was still alive. "We're coming," Una whispered to the unknown survivors. "Hold on, we're coming." The Devourers threw themselves at the fleet in one final, desperate attack. They knew that if the humans reached that ship, everything would change. They had kept their prisoners trapped for 600 years. They would not lose them now, but the humans would not be stopped. Not today. Not ever. The golden light blazed brighter. The voices grew louder. The music played on. And through the darkness, through the fear, through the ancient evil that had killed so many, the human fleet punched through. They reached the ship. They reached the survivors' dot, and the Devourers screamed in defeat. The signal wasn't for us, but we answered anyway. Part 3. The trap 3 weeks felt like 3 years. The fleet traveled through empty space, past dead stars and forgotten planets. Every day, the light grew weaker. Every day, the darkness grew stronger. And then, on the 21st day, they arrived. Captain Una stood on the bridge and looked out at nothing. That was the only word for it. Nothing. The stars had disappeared. The light had disappeared. Outside the windows, there was only blackness. Pure, complete, endless blackness. "We're here," Jiwoo said quietly. Her voice was small. "The void marshes." Dongsu checked his instruments. "I'm not reading anything. No stars, no planets, no radiation. It's like space itself has been erased." "Turn on the lights," Una ordered. Haijin pressed a button. The powerful lights she had installed blazed to life, shooting beams of brightness into the darkness. But the beams didn't go far. After a few hundred meters, they simply stopped. The darkness swallowed them. "That's not possible," Haijin whispered. "Light doesn't just stop. That's not how physics works." "It works here," Una said. She felt cold. Not in her body, but in her mind. There was something wrong with this place. Something deeply, fundamentally wrong. The communication screen flickered. Admiral Subin's face appeared, but it was fuzzy and broken. Static filled the image. "Captain, can you? Me?" Subin's voice came in pieces. "Admiral, your signal is breaking up." "I know, something blocking communications. The other ships having the same problem." Una turned to Dongsu. "Can you boost our signal?" "I'm trying, but something is actively interfering. It's not just distance. Something is eating our transmissions." Before Una could respond, Jiwoo gasped. "Captain, look." Everyone turned to the front windows. At first, Una saw nothing. But then, as her eyes adjusted, she began to see shapes in the darkness. Huge shapes. Floating shapes. Ships. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of ships. Drifting silently through the void. Their lights were dead. Their engines were cold. They looked like giant metal skeletons. "Those are the ships that came before us," Dongsu said. His voice was barely a whisper. "The Kalori, the Mendrith, the Orvani. They're all here." Una stared at the graveyard of civilizations. Each ship represented hundreds of lives. Scientists and soldiers and explorers who had come to answer the signal, who had come to help. And they had all died here, in this terrible darkness. "Keep moving," Una ordered. Stay in formation. Don't let the dead ships distract you. The fleet moved forward slowly, carefully. They passed ship after ship after ship. Some were ancient, covered in dust and decay. Some looked almost new, like they had arrived only yesterday. All were silent. All were dead. Then the whispers began. At first, Yuna thought she was imagining it. A soft sound at the edge of her hearing, like voices far away. But the sound grew stronger. It crept into her ears and wrapped around her brain. "Captain, are you hearing that?" Dong-su asked. His face was pale. "I hear it." The whispers were everywhere now. They seemed to come from the darkness itself. And slowly, Yuna began to understand words. "You shouldn't have come," the voices said. "You should have stayed away. Now you will join us. Now you will become part of the darkness." Yuna gripped the arms of her chair. Don't listen to them. Focus on your jobs. But it was hard not to listen. The whispers knew things. They spoke of fears and failures. They told Yuna that she was a bad captain, that her crew would die because of her. They told Dong-su that he was weak, that everyone secretly laughed at him. They told Ji-woo that she would never find her way home, that she would be lost forever. On the other ships, the same thing was happening. Yuna could see it on the broken communication screens. Crew members were arguing with each other. Some were crying. Some were screaming. The whispers were tearing them apart. Then came the shadows. They rose from the darkness like smoke rising from a fire. Dark shapes with no form, no face, no body. They were made of nothing, yet they were everywhere. They pressed against the windows of the ships. They slipped through tiny cracks in the walls. They filled the air with cold and fear. These were the devourers. The ancient things that lived in the void marshes. The monsters that had killed every expedition that came before. On a ship called the Morning Star, Yuna watched through a broken video feed as the shadows entered the bridge. The crew tried to fight them, but how do you fight shadows? Weapons passed through them. Fists passed through them. Nothing could touch them, but the shadows could touch the crew. They wrapped around the sailors like cold blankets. They whispered into their ears. And one by one, the crew members of the Morning Star turned against each other. Friends attacked friends. Brothers attacked brothers. Within minutes, the ship was silent. The Devourers had won. "We're losing ships," Dong-su reported. His hands were shaking. 5 ships have gone dark. No, 7. No, 10. The whispers grew louder. "Give up," they said. "There is no hope here. There is no rescue. There is only darkness. Join us. Become one with the void." Yuna felt the fear pressing against her mind. It was so strong, so heavy. Part of her wanted to give up. Part of her wanted to close her eyes and let the darkness take her. It would be so easy, so peaceful. Just let go. No. Yuna stood up from her chair. Her legs were shaking, but she forced them to be still. Her heart was racing, but she forced it to slow down. She was the captain. She was responsible for these people. She would not let them die in the dark. "Hi, Jin," she said. Her voice was strong and clear. "The lights. Make them brighter." "Captain, they're already at maximum. I don't care. Find a way. Reroute power from weapons. Reroute power from shields. Give me light." Hai-Jin's hands flew across her controls. I can try something. It might burn out the systems, but do it." The lights on the Defiant Star flickered. Then they exploded with brightness. Pure white light poured from every lamp, every panel, every surface. It was blinding. It was beautiful. And the shadows screamed. They pulled back from the ship, twisting and riding in the light. The whispers turned to shrieks. For the first time, the Devourers felt pain. "It's working!" Dong-su shouted. The light is hurting them. But Yuna knew it wouldn't last. Already the lights were fading as the power drained. And there were so many shadows. So many devourers. The fleet was scattered and broken. Half the ships were already lost. Then Ji Woo spoke up. Her voice was strange, calm, almost dreamy. Captain, I found something. What? The signal. The original distress call. I traced it to its source. Ji Woo pointed at her navigation screen. It's coming from the center of the void marshes. And there's something there. Something the devourers are guarding. Yuna looked at the screen. Deep in the heart of the darkness, there was a small point of light, faint, flickering, but real. Survivors, Yuna breathed. Maybe, or maybe it's just another trap. Yuna thought about the dead ships floating around them. She thought about the crews who had come before, full of hope and courage. They had all failed. They had all died, but they had all come alone. They had all come as individual ships, individual species, fighting by themselves. They hadn't known how to work together. They hadn't known how to fight the darkness. Humans were different. Humans had always been different. Open a channel to the fleet, Yuna ordered. All ships. Every single one. The communications are still broken. Then fix them. Find a frequency the devourers aren't blocking. I need to talk to my people. Dong-Su worked frantically at his console. Seconds passed. The shadows were gathering again, preparing for another attack. Got it, Dong-Su shouted. Channel open. Yuna took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would decide everything. All ships, this is Captain Yuna. I know you're scared. I know the whispers are telling you to give up. But don't listen to them. The devourers want us to feel alone. They want us to turn against each other. That's how they win. That's how they've always won. She paused. But we are not alone. We have each other. We are humans. We face our fears together. We fight our battles together. And we will survive this darkness together. Do you hear me? We are going to survive. Across the fleet, on ships full of terrified crews, people lifted their heads. They heard their captain's voice cutting through the whispers. They remembered who they were, and slowly, they began to fight back. The signal wasn't for us, but we answered anyway. Part 2. The expedition, 3 days passed quickly. In secret bases across Earth and its colonies, ships were being prepared. Crews were being assembled. Supplies were being loaded. The biggest human fleet in history was getting ready to fly into the unknown. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of her ship, the Defiant Star. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm eyes. She had been a captain for 15 years. She had fought pirates. She had explored new worlds. She had survived things that would break most people. But she had never done anything like this. The Defiant Star was the lead ship of the expedition. It was fast and strong, built for both speed and battle. Yuna loved this ship like it was her home. Because it was her home. Because it was her home, she had spent more time on this bridge than anywhere else in the universe. Captain. A voice came from behind her. Yuna turned to see her second officer, Dong-Su, walking toward her. He was a tall man with worried eyes. He worried about everything. That was his job. What is it? Yuna asked. The final crew reports are in? All 47 ships are ready. That's over 12,000 people, Captain. 12,000 lives in your hands. Yuna nodded. She felt the weight of that number. I know. Do you? Dong-Su stepped closer. His voice was low now, meant only for her. Captain, I have to ask. Are we doing the right thing? The elder races have been traveling space for thousands of years. They know things we don't. If they say the void marshes are dangerous, they are dangerous, Yuna said. I never said they weren't. Then why are we going? Yuna was quiet for a moment. She looked out the front window of the bridge. Stars stretched out before her, endless and beautiful. Somewhere out there, past those stars, was a place of darkness. A place where ships went to die. When I was a little girl, Yuna said slowly, my grandmother told me a story. She said that long ago, before humans went to space, there was a great flood. Many people climbed to high ground to save themselves. But some people got trapped in the low areas. The water was rising. They were going to die. Dongsu listened quietly. Most of the people on the high ground stayed where they were. Yuna continued. They said it was too dangerous to help. They said anyone who went down would drown too. But a few people grabbed ropes and boats and went down anyway. They pulled the trapped people out of the water. Some of the rescuers died. But many more people were saved. And the point of this story? Yuna turned to face him. The point is that my grandmother was one of the people who got saved. If those rescuers had listened to the warnings, if they had stayed safe on their high ground, I wouldn't exist. My mother wouldn't exist. None of my family would exist. Dongsu was silent. That's why we're going, Yuna said. Because someone out there might be worth saving. And if we're wrong, if it really is a trap, at least we will know. At least we will have tried. Before Dongsu could respond, the door to the bridge opened again. 2 more crew members walked in. The first was Ji Woo, the ship's navigator. She was young, barely 25, but she was the best navigator in the fleet. She could find a path through an asteroid field while half asleep. The second was Haijin, the chief engineer. She was older than Yuna, with gray streaks in her hair and oil stains on her uniform. She had kept the Defiant Star running for 10 years. She knew every wire and bolt on the ship. Captain, Jiwoo said, I've finished plotting the course to the Void Marshes. It's a long trip. 3 weeks at maximum speed. 3 weeks is fine, Yuna replied. What about the route? Any obstacles? A few asteroid belts. 1 or 2 unstable stars. Nothing we can't handle. Jiwoo paused. But Captain, once we enter the Void Marshes, I won't have any stars to navigate by. It's completely dark in there. I'll have to rely on instruments alone. Can you do it? Jiwoo smiled. It was a confident smile. I can do anything, Captain. Yuna almost laughed. Good. Haijin, what about the ship? Are we ready? Haijin made a grumbling sound. Ready as we'll ever be. I've checked the engines 3 times. I've upgraded the shields. I've even installed some new lights. New lights? The brightest lights I could find. If we're flying into darkness, I want to make sure we can see what's coming. Haijin crossed her arms. I don't like this mission, Captain. I want you to know that. Flying into the unknown with no backup and no support from the coalition. It's crazy, but you're coming anyway, Yuna said. Of course, I'm coming. Someone has to keep this ship from falling apart. And besides, Haijin's voice softened. I heard the signal too. That voice asking for help. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about whoever made that recording. Wondering if they were still alive somewhere. Wondering if anyone would ever come for them. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Everyone felt the same thing. The signal had touched something deep inside them. It had reminded them of what it meant to be human. The communication screen flickered. A new face appeared. It was Admiral Park Subin, calling from her flagship. Captain Yuna, she said. All ships report ready. We're waiting for your order. Yuna took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of no return. Once they started, there would be no going back. Admiral, before we begin, I want to say something to the fleet. Go ahead. I'll open a channel to all ships. The screen changed. Now Yuna could see the faces of captains from all 47 ships. They looked at her with trust and fear and hope. She had to give them something to believe in. "Everyone," Una began, "you know why we're here. You've heard the signal. You know what the elder races said. They told us to ignore it. They told us to stay safe. They told us that the void marshes would kill us all." She paused. "Maybe they're right. Maybe we're flying to our deaths. I won't lie to you and pretend this will be easy. It won't be. We're going somewhere that has swallowed entire civilizations. We're going against the wishes of every other species in the galaxy. We're alone." On the screens, the captains watched her. No one spoke. "But here's what I know," Una continued. "I know that 600 years ago, someone sent a message asking for help. And for 600 years, the galaxy has ignored them. The elder races decided it was too dangerous. They decided that their own safety was more important than saving lives. They gave up." Her voice grew stronger. "We are not going to give up. We are humans. We don't abandon people who need us. We don't hide from danger. We don't let fear decide what we do. When someone calls for help, we answer. That's who we are. That's who we've always been." She could see the captains nodding. Some of them had tears in their eyes. "I won't promise you that we'll all survive this mission. I won't promise you that we'll find anyone to save. But I will promise you this. We will try. We will do everything in our power to bring hope to that dark place. And whatever happens, we will face it together. As one fleet. As one people. As humans." She raised her hand. "Start your engines. Plot your courses. Today, we fly into the darkness. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of." Across the fleet, engines roared to life. Ships began to move, forming into formation. The greatest human expedition in history was beginning. On the bridge of the Defiant Star, Ji Woo entered the final coordinates. Haijin ran one last check on the engines. Dong-Su stood beside Una, his worry now mixed with something else. Pride, maybe, or determination. "Captain," he said quietly, "I'm sorry for questioning you earlier." "Don't be sorry," Una replied. "Questions are good. They keep us honest. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're leading this mission. I wouldn't follow anyone else into that place." Una smiled. "Thank you, Dong-Su. Now let's go save some people." The stars outside the window began to stretch and blur. The Defiant Star jumped into hyperspace, followed by 46 other ships. They flew toward the edge of known space, toward a place of shadows and death, toward the void marshes. Behind them, the elder races watched with 4 eyes and 6 eyes and no eyes at all. They shook their heads and whispered to each other. The humans were fools. The humans were going to die, but deep in their ancient hearts, some of them felt something strange. Something they had not felt in a very long time. They felt hope. The signal wasn't for us, but we answered anyway. Part 1. The warning. The signal came on a cold Tuesday morning. It was not a quiet thing. It screamed across every radio wave, every satellite dish, and every communication device in the known galaxy. Scientists on 100 different worlds stopped their work. Soldiers put down their weapons. Children looked up at the sky. Everyone heard it. On Earth, in the city of Seoul, a young man named Taewon sat in his office. He was the human ambassador to the Galactic Coalition. This was a fancy title that meant he spent most of his days in meetings with aliens who thought humans were too young and too stupid to matter. Taewon was used to being ignored. He was used to being told that humanity needed to wait its turn. But on this Tuesday, his communication screen lit up with urgent messages. The signal had arrived. Taewon leaned forward and pressed a button. The signal played through his speakers. It was a voice, but not a human voice. It was high and broken, full of fear. The words were in an old language, but his computer translated them quickly. "Help us, please. We are trapped. We are dying. The coordinates are attached. Please, anyone, help us." The message repeated again and again. Taewon felt something cold move through his chest. He had heard many things in his years as ambassador. He had heard threats and promises and lies. But he had never heard anything like this. This was real fear. Real pain. His door opened. A tall alien walked in. This was Delegate Vorn, a member of the Elder Council. Vorn belonged to a species called the Pentari. They had traveled to stars for 10,000 years before humans learned to make fire. Vorn looked down at Taewon with 4 silver eyes. "You have heard the signal," Vorn said. It was not a question. "Yes," Taewon replied. "It sounds like a distress call. Someone needs help." Vorn made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Someone always needs help, young one. That does not mean we should answer." Taewon frowned. "I don't understand. If someone is in danger, we should send ships. We should investigate." "No." Vorn's voice was hard now. "You will do nothing. The council has already decided. The signal comes from the Void Marshes. Do you know what that place is?" Taewon had heard stories. The Void Marshes were a region of space far from any star. It was dark there, empty. Ships that entered did not return. Entire fleets had vanished without a trace. The elder races avoided that place like humans avoided fire. "I know the stories," Taewon said carefully. "But stories are not facts. Maybe the ships that vanished just had bad luck. Maybe their navigation systems failed. We have better technology now. We could die. You could die." Vorn stepped closer. "Listen to me, human. Your species is young. You have been in space for less than 300 years. You do not understand the dangers that wait in the darkness. The Void Marshes are not empty. Something lives there. Something old. Something hungry. What is it? We do not know. We only know that it sends signals like this one. Distress calls. Cries for help. And when ships come to investigate, they disappear. Forever." Vorn placed a thin hand on Taewon's desk. "The signal is bait, Ambassador. It is a trap. Whatever made that recording is already dead. Their voice is just being used to lure more victims." Taewon was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his screen, where the message still played on repeat. "Help us, please. We are trapped. How do you know they are dead?" he asked softly. "Because that signal has been broadcasting for 600 years, Vorn replied. "We first detected it long before your ancestors built their first cities. Many species answered it. The Kalori sent 100 ships. The Mendrith sent their greatest warriors. The Orvani sent their wisest scientists. None of them came back. Not one. The Void Marshes swallowed them all." Taewon felt the weight of those words. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of lives. All gone. "The Council's decision is final," Vorn continued. "No member species will respond to this signal. That includes humanity. I am here to deliver this order personally. You will tell your fleet commanders to ignore the coordinates. You will tell your people to forget what they heard. Is that clear?" Taewon looked up at the tall alien. He saw the certainty in those silver eyes. Vorn truly believed he was doing the right thing. He believed he was protecting humanity from a terrible mistake. "I understand the Council's decision," Taewon said. Vorn nodded slowly. "Good. I'm glad you are reasonable. Some of your kind can be difficult. May I ask one more question?" "You may. In 600 years, has anyone ever tried to find out what is actually in the Void Marshes? Has anyone tried to fight back? Or have you all just been hiding?" Vorn's 4 eyes narrowed. For a moment, Taewon thought the alien might be angry. But then Vorn simply turned and walked toward the door. "We are not hiding," Vorn said without looking back. "We are surviving. There is a difference, young one. Perhaps one day you will understand that." The door closed. Taewon was alone again. He sat in silence for a long time. The signal continued to play. "Help us, please. We are dying." Taewon thought about what Vorn had said. The elder races had known about this signal for 600 years. They had watched species disappear. They had done nothing. They had decided that some things were too dangerous to face. But Taewon was human. And humans did not think that way. He opened a new channel on his communication screen. A familiar face appeared. It was Fleet Admiral Park Subin, the commander of Earth's Deep Space Forces. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She looked tired, but she always looked tired these days. "Ambassador," she said, "I assume you're calling about the signal." "I am. The Council has ordered us to ignore it." Subin nodded slowly. "I figured they would. The elder races don't like taking risks. No, they don't." Taewon paused. "Admiral, what do you think?" Subin was quiet for a moment. "I think someone is asking for help. I think we have ships. I think we have soldiers. And I think sitting here doing nothing while people suffer goes against everything we stand for. The Council says it's a trap. Maybe it is. But I've never met a trap that couldn't be beaten by someone clever enough." Subin leaned forward. "What are you really asking me, Ambassador?" Taewon took a deep breath. He knew that what he was about to do could end his career. It could start a war with the Galactic Coalition. It could kill thousands of people. But he also knew that he could not ignore that voice. He could not pretend he had not heard it. "I'm sending you the coordinates," Taewon said. "I want you to assemble a fleet. Our best ships. Our best crews. We're going to answer that signal." Subin smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "I was hoping you would say that. Admiral, I need you to understand something. If we do this, we're on our own. The Council won't help us. They might even try to stop us. We could lose everything. Ambassador, with respect, we're humans. We've always been on our own. That never stopped us before." Taewon felt something warm spread through his chest. It was hope. It was pride. It was the feeling of doing something right, even when everyone else said it was wrong. "Get the fleet ready," he said. "We leave in 3 days." "Yes, sir." The screen went dark. Taewon leaned back in his chair and looked out his window. The stars were shining in the night sky. Somewhere out there, in the darkness of the void marshes, someone was waiting. Someone was hoping. The elder races had told humanity to stay away. They had warned that the signal was not for them. They had ordered them to be quiet and obedient, but humans were never very good at following orders.